The ensemble of characters in Knives Out are phenomenally written and performed. I've already touched on how fun Trooper Wagner and Detective Elliot are.
Again, more weak sauce. You're just dumping that vat of weak sauce.
So now is a good time to start digging deeper into the larger Thrombey family. Let's start with Harlan. Harlan is a self-made success story as he built up a publishing empire due to the success of his mystery books. However, as he's gotten older, he's also grown wiser about noting the way that money and the privilege that comes with such a massive amount of wealth has poisoned the family that he loves. This is why he decides to cut them off financially, so that they may make their own way similar to how he did.
God, I'd like to fix some of this before I go. Close the book with a flourish.
Though Harlan's relationships with the various members of his immediate family are explored to varying degrees in Knives Out, it's his relationship with Marta that is one of the most heartwarming. Despite the fact that we only really get one full scene of them together, Christopher Plummer and Ana de Armas are so effective with their performances and chemistry that they fully convey the bond Harlan and Marta have with one another.
That's elder abuse. I'm going to call the AARP.
Don't make me get the belt, abuelo.
Even when Harlan believes that Marta has accidentally killed him, he is still determined to protect her. While other members of his family have developed some truly hateful opinions about immigrants and refugees, Harlan thinks of Marta's mother and wants her to be protected from those that would try to go after anyone that's undocumented. His last words were to give Marta a plan to save herself in order to save her family, and finally, to reassure her.
You do as I say, and everything will be just fine.
Despite how many characters are crammed into this story, you still manage to learn a lot about Harlan.
You and Harlan were drama mamas. You shared a love of twisting the knife into one another.
Fine.
I'm so old. So
Really love drama, huh?
In general, I love how dramatic and messy the vast majority of the men in this film are. You can't just chalk it up to Harlan's genetics either, since Richard is also bringing the mess. You get the sense that this whole family has a flair for the dramatics, but when it comes to Harlan specifically, you can see that he has been better than the others about channeling this part of himself into something productive. He uses it in his creative side as a storyteller. Still, it's fun to see his dramatic side come out in his interactions with others.
You can't be serious.
Not a red dime or word of my work to a single one of them, you included.
I'll circle back around to some of Harlan's interactions with other characters, but for now, I want to talk about his mother, Great Nana Thrombey, who is most definitely underrated. Admittedly, Whodunit doesn't have the same amount of pop as some of the other characters, since the audience is first guided down a path of underestimating her.
Harlan's mom.
Hi, Nana.
His mom.
Nana?
Wow, how old is she?
We have no idea.
That is one of the lines that got laughs from the audience every time I saw it. Since she doesn't speak and most of the people around her treat her as little more than a feeble elderly relative, it's all the more refreshing when Benoit Blanc takes the time to sit and speak with her, even if we don't ever hear her speak.
Good morning, Mrs. Thrombey.
It speaks to how kind he is, but it also shows how developed Benoit's sleuth skills are, that he can observe her and pick up on the fact that she is more than capable of sharing her perspective too.
I think you're very perceptive and very capable of telling me what you saw the night of your son's party.
There is so much happening in this script that not everyone who watched Knives Out may have taken the time to truly reflect on the fact that Whodunit shared that she saw Ransom sneaking out of the house after leaving the first time, and in all likelihood knew that she was incriminating him in the process. Benoit points out to the audience that Whodunit has lost her son, and deduces that no one else in the family has taken the time to ask her how she is coping with this loss. You could speculate that since Whodunit knows that Marta is a caretaker with a good heart, she would also know that Marta would never turn her out of the house that she's now inherited from Harlan. And we know that to be true because at the end when the rest of the family is outside, Whodunit is not cast out with them. However, I prefer a more romantic interpretation of the character. I think that she's a good person and that she raised her son well. It's very common for Western cultures to discard their elderly relatives into nursing homes, but Harlan opts to keep her close instead, despite his having the financial means to put her in the most affluent nursing home money could provide. She's clearly more observant than a lot of the other characters give her credit for, and she will have seen over the years how money and privilege has poisoned her family the same way Harlan noticed it before deciding to cut them all off. This is a family that doesn't hide their ugly traits, regressive beliefs, or their lack of empathy for others. Whodunit losing her son is a powerful loss, and her willingness to incriminate Ransom says a lot about her character without losing her air of mystery. Also, I like to think that Harlan got his love of messy drama from her. We're going to do a deep dive into the other members of the Thrombey family, but first we should dig into Benoit Blanc, the last of the gentleman sleuth. It's been a while since we got a new addition to the roster of iconic detectives, but with just one film, he has already claimed his space alongside the likes of Sherlock Holmes, Miss Marple, and Poirot. There's an underlying energy to Benoit Blanc that I firmly believe exists because of how much fun Daniel Craig is having playing him.
Coming to this was just a very easy choice because one, I'd wanted to work with Rian for a long time, and two, scripts like this just don't come along. I mean, they're once in a blue moon. So, and it was I read it and I kind of had to read it again almost immediately to think, was that as good as I thought it was? And in fact it was, and it's just, I'm just so kind of happy and kind of flattered and honored that someone should give me a script like this and a part like this, because it's such a sort of rich and sort of and sort of the fact that he's trusted me to do it is just such a lovely thing.
Daniel Craig took Rian Johnson's note that Benoit Blanc had a light southern accent and amplified it into something hilariously iconic.
I cannot say, but let me assure you this. My presence will be ornamental.
Daniel Craig convinced Rian Johnson to keep the donut monologue at the beginning of the big reveal when Rian was considering cutting it. On paper, it's easy to doubt whether something as ridiculous as this should be kept in.
But we must look a little closer. And when we do, we see the donut hole has a hole in its center.
But Daniel Craig is a brilliant actor, and Knives Out had a truly collaborative creative process, so he showed up to set with that accent ready to go and filmed this scene as his introduction to the majority of the cast.
Excuse me!
By the way, that dog's reaction was genuine, and I know this because I listened to Rian Johnson's commentary track. Benoit Blanc arrives with an alluring air of mystery. Initially, I had thought that his repeatedly striking a piano key was a way of trying to keep the people being questioned on edge, but apparently it was a covert way of communicating with Detective Elliot while he was conducting these interviews. When he later speaks with Marta about Gravity's Rainbow, he gives a deeper insight into his methodology.
I observe the facts without biases of the head or heart.
Why are we doing all this again?
This is just some follow-up questions. We're attempting to be thorough so we can figure out the manner of death.
I determine the ark's path, stroll leisurely to its terminus, and the truth falls at my feet.
He is highly intelligent about looking for clues and following the physical evidence, but his approach to solving the crimes he investigates is far more layered than just that. On the most outward layer of his skills, there are plenty of instances where you see him honing in on tiny details. He knocks over the go board and notes that the sound isn't loud enough to have been what summoned Joni from downstairs.
How'd the go board get knocked over?
We were just goofing around.
I'm calling the family.
He takes note of the mud outside and follows that lead into the house when looking at the carpet and the windowsill. He also was the one to discover the secret window when one of Harlan's dogs brought him a broken piece of wood.
No, that would not explain this. Analyze that mud. It will match these traces. Physical evidence can tell a clear story with a forked tongue.
The dogs are one of the first things shown to the audience in the film's opening shot. This, much like the rest of this meticulously crafted work of art, does not feel like an accident. Benoit says this about dogs and their instincts.
Best judge of character is a dog. found that to be true.
The dogs get along with Marta, which is why they don't bark at her. Of course, this is noteworthy because of the clue of the dogs barking in the middle of the night when Ransom tried to sneak back in. However, this note about the dogs is also speaking to something deeper in Benoit Blanc as a character. Though he speaks about following the evidence and not being biased by the heart, that's not actually true. He repeatedly makes a point of noting how Marta has a kind heart. It's one of the first things he says when he meets her.
He needed a friend.
Does having a kind heart make you a good nurse?
Hey, wait, Detective, why me?
I trust your kind heart.
Though he notices the blood on her shoe when he first meets her, he also picks up on the stark contrast in her disposition compared to the various members of the Thrombey clan he's just spent the morning questioning. This is not my way of insinuating that he's some sort of magical mind reader, but what he does have is a highly developed ability to read people. We are often taught about the 5 senses, but it's somewhat strange that when senses are being discussed, that intuition is often excluded from that conversation. Presumably, Benoit Blanc has been investigating murders for several years by the time we're introduced to him, and in the process would have encountered several murderers. Though we can only speculate on the motives he's encountered along the way, he's probably met at least a few that were more cold and vicious. This is why even after seeing clear, hard evidence on Marta's shoe that could implicate her as the killer, he isn't so quick to come to that conclusion.
Physical evidence can tell a clear story with a forked tongue.
This empathetic approach to his work is what makes him a better detective, just like Marta's kind heart makes her a better nurse. It's why they end up being kindred spirits that work well together on the case. It also relates to some deeper messages of the film that we'll be digging into later. While I'm still in the section of going through and discussing this ensemble of brilliant characters, I wanted to also note how well these characters have been written to resemble one another. This isn't just down to the surface level of casting actors that look alike, though I do find it eerie how much Don Johnson and Chris Evans physically resemble one another. There are distinct character traits that show how certain values and traits have been passed down from one generation to the next, through nature, nurture, or both. Despite how little time Meg and Joni are shown interacting with one another, the family resemblance is strong between the two. Although Joni is often the butt of jokes due to her hyper-fixation on social media and silly business endeavors.
Sorry, the nugget of...
Flam.
Oh, yeah, Flam, your skincare company. Sorry.
I forgive you.
No, have you seen her Insta? She's an influencer.
I'm not on Twitter anymore. So DM me on Instagram, okay? I want to talk to you.
You cannot deny that she would have served as a strong role model to Meg growing up. They both have no problems fighting back against the rest of the family, particularly when they don't agree with their regressive philosophies.
They're putting children in cages. I mean, these are camps.
Come on, Joni.
Swatting Syrian refugees.
No, I was not.
Alt-right troll.
Meg is going to school to obtain some sort of degree that I would guess is somewhere in the realm of women's studies or something else in the liberal arts, which other members of the family mock her for.
You know Dad pays for her crypto-Marxist, post-deconstructural, feminist, poetry theory, whatever major.
Hey, Meg. How's the SJW degree coming?
Trust fund prick.
All right.
That's also a good example of family resemblance, but we haven't gotten to the Linda, Richard, and Ransom section, so staying on topic here, it's a testament to Meg's character that she would want to pursue an education at all when she has the options to try to immediately start a career that's financially jump-started by Harlan's money, go into the family business, or simply mess around with no productivity at all. However, that doesn't appeal to her. Despite the many flaws of her mother and having every opportunity to be poisoned by being born into so much wealth and privilege, Meg for the most part seems to have a good heart, which is why she gets along so well with Marta. You can tell there's a genuine friendship there, especially since Marta trusted her enough to share about her mother. Meg cracking under the pressure of her family and the threat of not having her tuition money doesn't necessarily mean that she's doomed to be as bad as the rest of her family. This close-up on her eyes when she calls Marta is not only aesthetic, pathetic as hell, it also makes the audience focus on her eyes. If the eyes are the window to the soul, then we are able to watch hers closely and see that she doesn't feel good about what she's doing. Also, on a side note, this is one of my favorite types of lighting just in general. If you get this lighting, that's how you know you are the standard that others want to reach. Despite Joni's many character flaws, like trying to be a scammer so your daughter ends up no longer having her tuition paid for, Toni Collette makes Joni a really fun character to watch.
Nobody eats a single baby carrot with passive-aggressive fervor like Toni Collette.
The character detail I appreciate most about her is the way she represents a particular type of laziness. She's clearly a very determined woman, yet she doesn't make the right decisions for her business to be successful so that she would be able to afford to pay for her daughter's tuition herself. She also doesn't read the New Yorker article about Benoit Blanc.
Wait a minute. I read a tweet about a New Yorker article about you.
This is a deliberate contrast to Linda, who is able to successfully launch her own real estate business.
Mr. Blanc, I know who you are. I read your profile in the New Yorker. I found it delightful.
These details are important not only because they inform you who Joni is, but how Meg represents the ability to be better than your parents if you proactively pursue that betterment. Joni's not all bad though. Like I said before, she will have influenced Meg to develop more socially progressive views than the rest of her family.
They're putting children in cages. I mean, these are camps.
Come on, Joni.
Swatting Syrian refugees.
No, I was not.
Alt-right troll.
I'm so sorry I told them about your mom.
Meg, it's okay.
Before it was revealed that Marta had inherited everything, Meg was the one who seemed most intent on making sure that Marta was also taken care of. The message may have gotten lost along the way in all the commotions, but I would still speculate that Meg would have been the one to push the rest of the family to do this in the first place.